I know.
Okay, so past 6. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good evening, councillors and member of the public, and welcome to this extraordinary Finance and General Purpose Committee meeting on today, Wednesday, the 25th of June. So let's get straight to business. Is there any apologies for absences received?
So Councillor Dean Marie said he was likely to be late, but he may not make it at all. So he did ask that Councillor Morehouse be his substitute, but Councillor Morehouse isn't here at the moment.
Okay, well, if Councillor Morehouse does arrive, he is the nominated substitute. So he is the person who is permitted to vote.
Yes.
We have got some other councillors who are not members of this committee, and welcome to them. You are entitled to join in the meeting, but you're not allowed to vote. Okay. All right. The second item is to receive a declaration of interests. Any declarations of disposable pecuniary interests from members in respect of the business to be transacted on the agenda. Anybody have any interests to declare? No.
I'm just going to make a point that when somebody does arrive late, could we, for this, but not just this meeting, but any meeting, if somebody turns up late, we ask that question, because if not, then they won't have been asked. It was part of the process, so it is really important.
Okay.
And we don't do it in any meeting.
Oh, here's Councillor.
Yeah.
Councillor Morehouse, do you have any disclosable pecuniary interests?
No. Oh, just one late.
Oh.
We think you know who you are. You know who you are.
Please remove the glasses.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Agenda item number 3 is the public participation. I understand we've got somebody who wants to speak. So this is a 20-minute session that's been set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. The individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes, and I know that written notice has been received.
Good evening. I'm speaking in relation to agenda item 4, the complaint brought by Councillor T. Carter. Firstly, it's my position that formal complaints are to be welcomed because they provide opportunities for strengthening understanding and improving policies and procedures. I offer you the following points for consideration. 1. The STC complaints procedure has not been submitted with the agenda. Therefore, it is unclear whether the submission of this complaint to F&GP complies with the procedure. Further, the complaints procedure is not on the STC website. In fact, the FOI publication scheme, a statutory requirement where I would have expected to find a link to the complaints procedure, remains incomplete more than 1 year after moving to a new website. If the submission of this complaint does not comply with the complaints procedure, it should not be considered further by this committee until compliance is achieved. I would have expected the complainant to have been given guidance on this matter, but it is not clear from the agenda bundle if that was done. Assuming this complaint complies with the complaints procedure, I offer the following for consideration. 2. The complaint refers to the town clerk sending out an official nomination form and stating that the nominator and seconder must attend the annual meeting of the council as required by part of the official process. I must point out that the process in question had not been deliberated or resolved by council, and it is not in the standing orders. Therefore, it was neither an official process nor agreed by council at that point, just an informal process to help support the formal procedure that was to take place at the annual meeting. It should be noted that even if the nomination form process were to be adopted into standing orders, it would be a non-statutory clause that could be overridden. 3. The complaint refers to the town clerk leading the part of the meeting where the chair and vice chair are elected. This was incorrect because the chair cannot be delegated to an officer. The NALC guidance also states that legislation requires the retiring chair to preside over the election of the new chair. Therefore, any irregularities that may have occurred did so under the chairmanship of Councillor P. Carter for the election of the chair and Councillor Tuper for the election of the vice chair. It is the role of the town clerk to advise councillors with regard to the rules and regulations applicable to the council, as was confirmed at Monday's meeting when the statements intrinsic to the AGAR were read out and resolved. 4. It seems that Councillor Chuka's initial nominator and seconder were not present at the time of the first vote due to the confusion over the meeting start time, which had been brought forward by an hour relative to the standard start time for meetings of full council. The town clerk asked if any other councillors would nominate and second Councillor Chuka before moving to a vote. So, if it might be argued that the nomination form process had been agreed by council by moving to the vote for Councillor P. Carter, it might perhaps also be argued that the town clerk's amendment permitting alternatives for absent councillors was also agreed at the point members moved to the vote for Councillor Chuka. The process of accepting an alternative nominator was subsequently repeated when Councillor D. Carter replaced Councillor Franklin as nominator for Councillor Murray as vice chair, but that is not included within the complaint. 5. The complaint speaks of breaking the regulations for local government elections, and the town clerk's report refers to the LGA 1972 and asks, did everyone have an equal and fair opportunity, and was there any disadvantage? The key test being, was it fair, transparent, consistent, coherent, and therefore reasonable? I contend that adherence to the nomination form process as originally written would have been intrinsically unfair and potentially unlawful because A, it did not allow for the unexpected absence of nominators or seconders, for example, if unwell, as was the case with Councillor Franklin on the night. B, the full list of candidates was not read out before moving to a vote for individual candidates, thus members may have been voting blind. C, there was no opportunity for anyone who had not completed the nomination form process for whatever reason to put themselves forward or be nominated at the annual meeting itself, that is, at the statutory event. I have observed other councils ask, is there anyone else who would like to stand for every chair and vice chair position, but that was not done at STC's annual meeting. Notwithstanding the above, the process adopted on the night appears to have been lawful and reasonable because it was transparent, alternative nominators and seconders were accepted, and that amendment was applied fairly and consistently, both for Councillor Chuka and Councillor Murray, the only two candidates to whom it was applicable on the night. In my opinion, the second vote for chair was invalid because the first vote was not rescinded by resolution. I think it was unnecessary. And lastly, councillors are not expected to know all of the rules and regulations. It is a fundamental part of the town clerk's role to advise all councillors on such matters. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to comment on that? Because we're going to move on to discuss the item that's been raised. Mr. Mayor.
Just one comment. Right at the start, I agree with a lot that was said at a very early point about the formal complaints process. This is not a complaint from a resident, from a customer. This is an internal complaint against the process, and the advice, as I understand, that the town clerk received from CUP is why we're here this evening. That falls firmly in line with that advice. So it wouldn't be about completing a pre-form with details. This is following the process as advised by the legal advice from CUP.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Black.
Very similar comment that I've got a copy of the complaints procedure that was agreed by this council on the 24th of June and appears in the minutes. I also have particular interest in it because I wrote a number of amendments or suggested amendments, most of which were adopted. And I have to agree entirely with my colleague here. It makes absolutely no reference to these sorts of circumstances. It is for an external person making a complaint about the council. It is not an internal one. And I think we ought to be very clear about that. If it's not on the website, it's another matter entirely. But it is crystal clear to any councillor that if they want to get hold of it, it was agreed by them, and it's very, very clear.
Excuse me, I think it does cover employees.
Yes, it does cover employees.
So it's people external to this council, but council employees and residents are covered by this.
Thank you for the correction.
This complaint procedure. Thank you. Any other, Councillor Morehouse?
Is that date 24th of June 2025 or 2024?
24. It's adopted by the council there, because I found my original letter a few days beforehand saying covered in red ink.
Okay, shall we move on then to item 4 on the agenda, which is the formal internal complaint from Councillor Paul Carter. So members are to consider a formal internal complaint from Councillor Paul Carter that relates to the process undertaken on the 15th of May 2025 for the election of mayor for the 2025-26, after which we need to make a decision. In order to structure the meeting, I would like to suggest that we ask Councillor Paul Carter to speak to the paper, to the complaint that he's submitting. We can then have a session of clarification where I would invite or ask that each member of the committee, initially member of the Finance and General Purposes Committee, have one question. Then we'll throw it open to other councillors here, and these are points of clarification only. After that, then the town clerk has prepared a report, and we'll invite the town clerk to speak to her report, after which I propose there will be another round of clarification questions. After all of the clarification questions have been done, I think we should have a round table and then have a summary as to whether we need to go forward with the formal complaint. Because of the nature of this, and the town clerk has been here working on Monday, Tuesday, and again tonight, Wednesday, I would ask for a volunteer to take notes on this item, please, to support the town clerk, because I think for her to be able to speak properly to the report and to take notes, I think it's asking a little bit too much of her on this occasion. So could I have a volunteer, please?
Don't worry, I'll do it. Don't worry, it's fine. I'll do it.
I would normally, but because I am intrinsic to this and to my second point, I'll pick up in a second. But it was more appropriate, I think, to
Same here.
involved.
Did you want to?
Don't worry, don't worry, Councillor Green.
No, thank you, Paul, but no.
Right, well, we will have kind of the recording of the meeting to kind of
Okay, I'll do my best, but
double back up.
we'll be.
Can I just, is everybody happy with this process?
So my second point is that I do want to make some commentary on what's in the report. So I do reserve the right to do that, because I know that that's in the around the table at the end. I'm happy to wait to that point. But I have comments. It's not a question of clarification.
Well, that's really what the round table
That's fine.
will be about. Councillor Wilde. So, Councillor Anderson.
You say that the town clerk will be giving us a report. I'm just anxious that we've received this report, but I haven't looked at it. Have we received this report?
Yes.
It's the second sheet.
Second sheet, no, you've gone too far, back out.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Oh, yes, okay, sorry.
Okay. All right, so I'd invite Paul Carter then to present. First up, could I just ask that the paper that you've submitted, which was dated on the 9th of June, this accurately sets out your complaint, and it's the entirety of your complaint.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But I have got the journey of how I came to the complaint. So I've got that to give. So it'll be additional to that. So I won't be reading that out. That is the complaint.
This is the complaint,
Yeah.
and this is accurately summarises to the best of your knowledge the complaint.
Yeah.
And it's in its entirety.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you.
Can I just mention one thing? Obviously, I've reserved my right So as comments come up later on, I reserve my right to add supplementary words to those. So if anybody has any questions or things, I'm reserving my right to speak.
Under the round table.
Under the round table, if that's okay. Yeah, super. And secondly, and this is nothing personal, I do not agree with Councillor Black taking the minutes. Councillor Black is actually of the same collective party as Councillor Tuka. So could it just be noted that I'm not happy with that? So that would be like perhaps me asking Councillor Danielle Carter to take the minutes.
The minutes will be reviewed, from a factual basis.
Yes.
By the town clerk and by myself as chair. So I feel you're calling into question my impartiality as chair here.
Well, you did
I
ask us.
resent the impugning my integrity. I really resent this.
You're
I
the same,
often, I'm sorry,
you're the
I
same
am an
political
independent
party.
councillor.
We're not a
They're
political
not a party, and Councillor Carter, I offered to do this because nobody else was stepping up to it. I'm
I'm
an
happy
honest
to do it.
person.
I'm happy to do it.
Well,
I'm
you are
qualified
one
to
of the
do it.
participants, so it's a bit inappropriate. I'm not a participant in this. And I really resent the imputation that I would be biased in this. I am not. And I would ask you to withdraw that. That is
You're of the
unacceptable.
same. You're of the
I'm
same
sorry,
collective group.
Councillor Carter, I am an
You're the
independent.
same collective group.
Councillor
I came
Carter,
to your AGM in February, and you were on the top table.
Yes.
You are the same
but
collective
I am
group.
still an
How can that be
Excuse me.
impartial?
I'm sorry, councillors. As far as I'm concerned, the town clerk and myself will be controlling the minutes. This was an aid, not
Indeed.
to take the full,
Indeed.
to take the full minutes, but an aid
Yeah.
to the town clerk in this. So I'm very happy, Councillor Black, if you're happy to take the minutes. You can have your objection, Councillor Carter. Your objection can be noted.
That's all I want. That's all I
But can I
want.
just say, I'm disappointed that you're objecting.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's fine.
Right.
That's fine. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you very much for listening to me. I just wanted to say two things up front. One thing was that, I hope we can all be grown up and professional about this. And the second thing was that obviously I didn't bring this about off of my own back. This came separately, but I'll explain that further. So go on if that's okay. So over the past 2 years, this lovely new council administration has stated that it is promoting transparency, democracy, honesty and truth. This is all relevant, Mr. Chairman. The business plan for this council says that it's to conduct business with integrity and impartiality. It's all been agreed by everybody in this room. Is to be open, to be transparent and accountable. And tonight, what we're doing is we're being accountable. And I'm really grateful that everybody here is accountable. The issues to do with the complaints procedure not being applicable to internal matters is obviously incorrect, because here we all are tonight and it is being heard. So if it wasn't applicable, we wouldn't all be here tonight. Many of you in this room had actually stated in your election leaflets, which I've got at home, and manifestos, that you were going to establish transparency, the 7 principles of life, democracy, and the Nolan principles to the work that you do here. So as one of the senior councillors of this council, I just ask that you hear me fairly and truthfully via our code of conduct. Thank you. On advice from 2 councillors at the time, I raised the matter of the mayoral election as early as the 18th of May. And it's now taken 36 days for my complaint to be heard this evening. It was left off of the F&GP, so if any of you are missing your favourite television programmes tonight, it was left off the F&GP last week. So I've been told it was going to be on the agenda for last week, and it seems only on pressure to get my complaint heard. Quite nicely, Councillor Duca agreed to this meeting happening tonight, along with Councillor Breen. This election process, I've been told, I originally approached the Democratic Services at Dover District Council, and they said that they believed that it was the process of the proper officer and that it did not relate to Dover District Council for the election process. I then contacted both NOW and CALC, and they said a similar matter. They said it comes down to the instructions and the process being led by the proper officer. But please, let's be aware this evening, I'm not looking for any blame culture, or I'm not looking for any major change. I'm just looking for recognition of what happened. Of course, this election process does have to follow the Local Government Act 1972, and we're speaking with Dover District Council now and CALC. They said it must follow the procedures laid out by the town clerk or the proper officer exactly, with no deviations or ad hoc arrangements or second votes. As you know, all know, on the 16th of April at 12:36, the town clerk sent out the official declaration of mayor making and the official nomination forms, which form an intrinsic part of the process. And this was for the mayor and the deputy mayor, where a proposer, a nominated councillor and a seconder had to officially sign and submit their forms in time. And in fact, I was turned down initially because when I submitted my original nomination forms, the town clerk raised an issue with them and said, oh no, they can't be signed by those people. And so the process of the nomination forms was intrinsic to this whole process. And I thank the town clerk for maintaining that. The official nomination forms were then collated, and on the 5th of May, the town clerk sent out another email declaring the agreed nominations for the positions of mayor and deputy mayor, and stated the following. The town clerk, as the proper officer, will lead the part of the meeting where the mayor and deputy mayor are elected. That the councillors that have nominated and seconded the above nominees must attend the meeting in person and endorse their nominations and seconding. Also, if for any reason you're unable to attend the meeting, you must inform the town clerk immediately. And as you know, that didn't happen, which was part of the process there. I do have copies of any of the forms if you haven't got them or you need them. So, as you know, moving on, 6 p.m. on the 15th of May was the time to have the election for the mayor and the deputy mayor. And once again, I've got the copy of the agenda that was there. It was quite a long agenda actually, but intrinsically, the first item was election of the mayor and then obviously the deputy mayor. And so whoever was a part of the election process had to be here at 6 o'clock on the 15th of May, and that was very important. So the meeting was opened by myself, and if any of you have watched the videos of this surveillance of this, I then handed over, as soon as I opened the meeting, and I said item number 1 is election of the mayor, and I handed over to our esteemed town clerk. The town clerk asked me personally if I was prepared to be nominated, and then if my nominator and seconder were present, which they were at the time. The town clerk then went on to ask Councillor Duca if he was prepared to be nominated and if his nominator and seconder were present, and of course they were not present, and that's a very crucial part of the whole process. Then the town clerk, and I believe perhaps this is well, is incorrect, then asked anybody in the room if they would like to nominate and then second Councillor Tuker. And when I spoke to Dover District Council about this, they said if you have a process, which is a nomination form, that process must be followed. And so that process of asking anybody in the room to nominate second was incorrect. And those nominations weren't put in by the deadline that was proposed. So, and they said they verbally would. I believe it was Councillor Green and Councillor Mallet at the time. And then obviously Town Clerk said, right, let's proceed to the vote. I got the minority vote, and I understand that. And Councillor Tuker got the majority vote. And under the auspices of the direction of the Town Clerk as proper officer, I then vacated the seat to let Councillor Tuker take up the position. But during the rest of the agenda, we went on with the rest of the agenda. The election of Councillor Wiles was 100%, and that was totally correct and undertaken. So that was okay. And then we went through the rest of the agenda was completed. But then quite strangely, I went off to move my car from a parking space. So I disappeared out of the chamber, and Councillor Tuker came after me, and we had a small conversation before we came back into the chamber. And Councillor Tuker said to me, he said, we've got to have a second vote because the first vote is invalid. And that was what Councillor Tuker said. Because I said, oh, why do we have the second? What's the second vote for? And then we were all rushed in here at the end of the agenda, after the agenda had been finished. And at that point, the nominator and seconder had turned up, but not for the agenda item that they should have turned up for. So, and then the second mayoral vote was invalid, which I believe has been said this evening as well. But there was no provision or procedural regulation for more than one vote. There never has been. I've been here 18 years. We don't keep having votes until somebody gets in. And also, as a presiding officer for governmental elections, we don't keep having votes to get people in for the government elections either. So, and as I said, I spoke to both NAUC, CALC and DDC, and they agreed that the process wasn't correct, and this doesn't happen in other elections. The advice I received from the chairman of CALC, as agreed by their legal advisor of CALC, the secretary of CALC and the chief executive of CALC on Monday the 25th of May at 10:01 was to include all the above. My understanding of Sandwich Town Council's procedures is that Paul Carter should have been re-elected as he followed the Sandwich Town Council procedures fully, and he was the only candidate when the election took place, as there was no other candidate present that was valid, who had their proposer and seconder there, as per Sandwich Town Council's procedural requires. And that is from the chair of CALC, but it's also been ratified by the chief executive and the secretary and the legal advisor. I'm raising this matter on the advice of CALC because when I spoke to the legal advisor of CALC, he said they couldn't personally intervene, as Dover District Council said they couldn't personally intervene, but they said that they did recognise that incorrect procedures had taken place on the 15th of May. This relies on all of us following the correct procedures that are given to us from the proper officer. And if we can't follow the proper procedures for the election of the mayor and other positions, this flags up, are we following the correct procedures in other areas of this council that we're undertaking? And that's very important. But tonight, I'm not asking for any recompense, I'm not asking for any blame, I'm not asking for any major changes. As I said, all I'm asking for is that this council recognises that what happened on the 15th of May at 6 p.m. was not the correct procedural requirements of this council. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Points of clarification. Councillor Anderson.
Well, I know you want to go round the table, but I do want to respond because it was myself who initially raised the question about the legitimacy of the election of the deputy mayor, because I noticed as the election for deputy mayor was taking place that more than one councillor, including I think yourself, Councillor Carter, have voted twice. And I'm very pleased that you've reminded us of the email that the town clerk sent on May the 5th, because I'm now looking at it. And you're quite right, you've quoted the first half where she talks about who has been nominated. But the email then goes on to say, for the mayor, the vote will proceed on a show of hands in public, with each councillor voting for one candidate only. Candidates may vote for themselves. The same paragraph is applicable where she says, for deputy mayor, the vote will proceed on a show of hands in public, with each councillor voting for one candidate only. Candidates may vote for themselves. And as I said, during the election for deputy mayor, I noticed that more than one councillor had voted twice. I actually turned to Councillor Fortescue and said, Councillor X has voted twice. I then decided, independently and without consulting any other councillor, not to raise the matter immediately, but to wait till the end of the meeting and then raise it with the town clerk. So as soon as the meeting had apparently ended, I went up to the town clerk, and I'm sure the town clerk would confirm, and said to her quietly, some councillors have voted twice. The town clerk's response was at first, I think, surprise and some concern. And I said, you sent an email. I had noticed it particularly because I had been voting for a preferential vote system, but we weren't offered that. We were simply offered one vote. And the town clerk said, I said to the town clerk, please check your emails. That is what you have told us, instructed us, that we each have one vote. And I then went and sat down, and I realised that there was some discussion going on, and I took note after the conversation. It went on for some time among certain councillors, and the next thing that happened, and I think entirely correctly, is that all the councillors were reassembled and told that there would be another vote for deputy mayor, whereupon Councillor Fortescue also suggested that given that we were all now going to vote again for deputy mayor, we should also all vote for mayor. And we were then instructed, as I remember it, by the town clerk, that we only had one vote. And the votes were held again. As I remember it, Councillor Carter, you again tried to vote twice, but it was pointed out to you that it was not possible to do that. You had only one vote, and as I remember it, you voted for yourself, which is perfectly acceptable, and indeed came with the instructing email. So my suggestion is that your suggestion in your report that it was as a consequence of the nomination procedure which had gone wrong, that we held another vote is inaccurate. That was not the cause.
That's what
of the
Councillor
second
Chuka
vote.
told me.
Well, I don't know what Councillor Duca said to you, but the cause of the second vote was the fact that some councillors had voted more than once.
I think that's correct, because Councillor Chuka said that the first vote may have been invalid, and could I come back in the chamber for a second vote?
Yes.
But a
So it
second
has
vote
nothing to do with
has
the
been raised. The second vote is not valid.
So
You can't
I will be making my comments when it's my turn, so I'm not going to
Okay.
interject and contradict, because it then becomes a discussion. But I will be coming back on certain points made in the report, but also tonight.
Okay, are there any other, could I just
I'm
comment,
sorry that-
your recollection of the people providing multiple votes for the deputy mayor? It wasn't possible to provide multiple votes for the mayor because it was an either or situation. But for the deputy mayor, people started off voting twice, and people were in difficult positions because they'd signed nomination forms in good faith before they knew the total extent of candidates that were running, and before they knew it was just going to be a one vote situation. Okay. Councillor Pennington, a point of clarification.
Yes, simply to ask, because it was my first reaction, and I've also been asked by residents, why it is the Finance and General Purposes Committee is handling this and not immediately the full council.
Well, I think it's kind of falling under the remit of general purposes in the first instance, and then it would go to full council depending upon the outcome of the general purposes committee. It's my understanding.
I think the advice
Yeah.
the town clerk can correct me is that this is a process issue that's been raised whilst people are mentioned within it. And the advice received from CALC is that therefore goes to the appropriate committee. And this is Finance and General Purpose Committee for Sandwich. The only option after that, if we decide not to support the complaint, is for the councillor concerned to raise a legal review away from the council. That's the two options I understand, but town clerk can confirm that.
Yes, that is the advice that I had from the legal advisor at CALC. Obviously, if members here would prefer things to go to the full council, that is an option for you, but it should come to this committee first. That was the advice I was given.
Okay. Any other points of clarification? Councillor Marie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to point out that I'm not here, I'm a human observer because I've run in late. Councillor Morehouse is in my seat tonight, and he will be voting on one part of his votes. Just to clarify that on the evening of the first vote, I came back after going downstairs for a cheeky cigarette like I normally do. Came back upstairs and I was approached by Councillor Chuka to say that the votes that would be taken, the vote for the deputy mayor would be taking place again for the second time due to people voting twice. I then stood up when everyone sat down on camera in front of everybody and said to him, in fairness, we should do the mayor's vote as well at the same time for transparency, so it doesn't look like we're just trying to do whatever we're doing. But I asked for the vote for mayor as well, and the whole council agreed with that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Shall we move on to the next report then from the town clerk with the advice given? So Jill, could you please talk to this paper, please?
Yes. So the purpose of the report is to share the advice that I obtained from the Kent Association of Local Councils that was emailed to me following a telephone conversation with the legal advisor. I contacted the legal advisor at CALC to seek advice following the email received from Councillor Paul Carter on the 21st of May 2025 that related to an official complaint for the Sandwich mayoral elections on the 15th of May 2025. After consultation with the legal advisor at CALC, the following points and advice were provided. It was his opinion that the Town Council should focus on the Local Government Act aspects, and I did attach legal topic notes 2 and 8 to this report this evening. In the legal advisor's opinion, the matter should be dealt with under an internal complaints process and relevant committee. hence we're at the Finance and General Purposes Committee. There is no local government ombudsman, and above this procedure or process, whatever you want to call it, that we're undertaking, the only above this is the judicial review, which would rarely proceed unless a major issue is identified and is a costly and would be a lengthy process, which the complainant would have to self-fund. Ideally, the Internal Complaints Committee, or Finance and General Purposes Committee, as we're sitting here, can find out what happened and why, with no blame, just identifying issues and mainly learn lessons. It should be professional and constructive. The advice also made reference to the non-statutory procedures. These tend to be in-house and non-statutory standing orders and conventions, and include proposing and seconding. They intend to be sensible and a mechanism, and should be treated with respect and consistency, but their wants or failings rarely invalidate the legal process. The key is the 1972 Local Government Act statutory procedures. The key question to be explored by the committee, and obviously if it went to law, would be, was the Local Government 1972 Act discharged? This will look at, did everyone have equal fair opportunity, and was there any disadvantage, i.e. frustrated from standing or incorrect voting? There are usually matter-of-fact issues and turn on the evidence. It looked to the legal advisor as if there were non-statutory procedural challenges, but did they change the statutory outcome? And conversely, can these issues, i.e. the lack of equality, be used to argue that it was fundamentally unfair? It seems unlikely from what you as the town clerk and Councillor Paul Carter have told me if the local 1972 Local Government Act was met. The key tests around the statutory end and process are also common law. Was it fair, transparent, consistent, coherent, lawful, and therefore reasonable?
Okay, thank you. Do you want to give us any of the highlights from legal note 2 and 8?
I can do, yes.
I have it here.
Thank you, I've got it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so legislation concerning the election of a chairman. There is always someone to preside over the council meeting, and the person presiding has a casting vote which must be used. The relevant legislation is the Local Government Act 1972. All references to sections and scheduled in this note are to the 1972 Act. And NAC's Model Standing Orders 5E to I incorporate statutory provisions. So the first business of the annual meeting is to elect a chairman, or mayor in our case, and the chairman of the council remains in office until his successor is elected, even when he has himself not been elected to the new council. The chairman, if present, must preside at the meeting, and if the chairman is absent from the meeting and the council has a vice chairman who is present, he must preside at the meeting. So retiring chairman's duties include noting the members who are present or absent, receiving nominations and counting votes in the election of the new mayor or chair. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's
all
it
right.
for
So
that
the summary point is that the chairman, if present, must preside at the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Are there any points of clarification for the town clerk? Councillor Wiles.
So can you just clarify that sentence? It seems unlikely from what you as town clerk and Councillor P. Carter told me if the 1972 LGA was met. Are they saying that we did not meet the terms of the LGA?
No. So what the legal advisor was saying, because I told him exactly what happened on the evening, and he said, in his opinion, which obviously he's not a court of law, but we did not breach the Local Government Act 1972. That was his opinion.
Did not breach.
Did not breach.
Yeah.
So I must get this out.
So the legal advisor has said we have.
In his opinion, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other points of clarification?
Can I just point out, similarly, I did speak personally on the telephone to the legal advisor of COUT, and he advised me to bring this official complaint to the thing, so that there is a conflict from the legal advisor of COUT. I wouldn't have brought this. Dover District Council didn't want to know. When I spoke to COUT, they put me through to the legal advisor. When I spoke to the legal advisor, he said, I believe you have a strong case for an internal complaint. So there is a
So what the legal advisor said was there were clearly challenges with the non-statutory procedures, so not the statutory procedures. So that wouldn't breach the Local Government Act. That's what he said, because it was non-statutory procedures.
Yeah, I didn't
It was
mention-
a process that I was trying to bring some sort of order to what was pretty chaotic. The weeks leading up to the mayoral elections, there were questions being fired at me. Can we have a secret ballot? Can we do postal voting? You know, all these queries. I sought to try and bring some order to the process and try and suggest that members could use a process, and we knew, so that we didn't get to the evening on the 15th of May and all sit here looking at each other, not knowing who was standing. That's what I did. There was nothing there that was in the standing orders to suggest the process. We didn't bring it to the council to suggest the process because there wasn't time. And basically, if members did not adhere to the advice that I'd given in that email, that was for them to reflect on that. What I would say is that I could not prevent anybody from standing for election. I could not prevent Councillor Emmett Chuka from standing as mayor. That would have been breaching the Local Government Act. So that's why I said in the meeting, because the two people that were on the form were not present, I invited if there was anybody else in the room that was prepared to nominate and second. That's all I did. And that was correct, because if I hadn't done that and I had said to Councillor Chuka, you cannot stand as mayor, I would have been breaching the Local Government Act because I was preventing him from actually standing for election. That's what I did. And I'll stand by exactly what I did. And I think that the process was sound. It's that people did not read the process correctly. They did not attend and the 6 p.m. time, by the way, has been the last 2 years exactly the same. It has never changed from 6 p.m. So don't know why anyone is talking about the time change, because it certainly didn't. The reason we do that, and that's what I introduced when I started, is because the annual town council meeting should be the first bit of business on that night, not the mayor making ceremony, which is what other councils do some in other places. We do the business first, and then we do the mayor making ceremony. So it's clear that 6 p.m. is when we're having the annual town council meeting. 7 p.m. we're down in the courtroom for the mayor making ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
Yeah, so just my interpretation, just the clarification thing is that obviously down to equality, and we can't actually, this council can't tick the box for equality, because what we're saying is there was a procedure for all the other candidates, but the procedure for Councillor Chuka didn't apply, which doesn't show equality, because obviously if everybody else had to follow the procedure that was laid down by the proper officer, it was only Councillor Chuka that didn't follow that procedure. So if this council then follows up on this, we've got to consider that was not equal. So
I think it might be time if I come in and make my opinions known, because we seem to be hearing a lot from Councillor Carter regards this, and as I am named in the process, it's key. I'm keen to make sure that I cover the points I want to make. So, that first of all, what I did want to say that regardless of what Councillor Carter might suggest tonight, this before, during, and where we are now has had an impact on the town clerk. Her integrity has been brought into question by Councillor Carter, because she has again restated tonight that she was aiding the councils in terms of the process. And that's an important point to recognise in all this. There is a person impacted by this. There are others around that, including myself, impacted by this. So it's not without any impact on individuals.
yeah, so I was impacted as well.
Yeah, if you allow me to go through mine, then you can come back.
Indeed.
And on that point, I suppose what's fairly right is the fact that on that evening, Councillor Carter said, and I quote, "We have the town clerk who is the best town clerk in the UK." And then only a day later, or 2 days later, have a complaint in against a process that Councillor Carter is suggesting had been delegated down to the proper office to run. But on the actual report itself, so Councillor Carter has asserted that the election practice was incorrect and wrote the agreed regulations for local government elections. That is not true. Makes reference, and in the report it says making reference to DDC Democratic Services, but then tonight it becomes clear, in contradicting that statement in the report, they told him they would not give him advice because it wasn't their place to do so. So I'd previously written that they would have said it wasn't their place, but actually Councillor Carter said that tonight. Councillor Carter makes reference to seeking advice from CALC over the phone, yet the town clerk has received written advice which is presented to us from a legal advisor of the same organisation, which says we do not support Councillor Carter's assertions. And in fact, in the email that the town clerk received, it refers to taking account of Councillor Carter's. Sorry, you don't need to be holding up paper in front of my face because I'm going through mine, then you have an opportunity to come back. So, yeah, just wait until I've gone through mine. This is not about argy-bargy across the table.
Yeah, no, excuse me, I asked earlier if your report was complete and comprised the entire complaint and was accurate, and you said it was.
Yeah, it is.
So, you know, other papers that you wish to bring now in terms of due process are not accepted.
And I'd like to say, referring back to you at the start of this meeting, you talked about remaining professional, smiling and laughing and throwing papers up in the air towards my face isn't the way of being professional in my opinion. Okay? Councillor Carter makes reference to the Local Government Act in his report more than once. Yet it's very clear from both what he has said himself, but also the town clerk tonight, we have adhered to it. And actually the Local Government Act is very light touch on the elections process. So there isn't anything you can specifically pull out of that act and say that that was not adhered to. Our own standing orders do not include any provision for how elections should be undertaken. But even if they did, the written guidance from CALC, and it was mentioned, their written guidance in response to the town clerk is that if they did include any statements, any want or failings rarely invalidate the legal process. I've looked again at the recording of the meeting more than once, and the election for the mayor was undertaken in good spirit and without any challenge. When the result was confirmed, I made my declaration and I signed the relevant form of acceptance, and I replaced Councillor Carter. But in Councillor Carter's report, he states that I hurriedly arranged a second vote of the mayoral candidates to make the vote legally binding. This is completely false. And I'd like to thank Councillor Anderson, who made her declaration about why it was called. And also Councillor Marie as well.
Why did you rush to bring me from the car park then?
I can answer that at the end, but I'm not taking questions as I go through what I want to say. I had already been successfully elected as the chair at that point, and I made my declaration of acceptance. When Councillor Carter stepped aside, this was the end of the process of electing the new mayor as far as I was concerned. The meeting was only reopened due to incorrect voting for the deputy chair. And that has been substantiated by more than one person in this room. And that's why I came out of the room to find you, Councillor Carter, because you were the only councillor missing at that point. The town clerk had determined through representation from others that we should run the deputy mayor's votes. I clarified with her whether, and Councillor Marie has said he prompted it, whether the mayor's vote should be held, and I was told for ratification it should go ahead. But that was not prompted by me. I did not come out to you and say you need to come in because the mayor's vote had to be rerun. The suggestion from Councillor Carter that my request to be considered for the chair role should have been voided would not have been compliant with the Local Government Act 1972, as excluding me would have disadvantaged me and I would not have had the equal and fair opportunity I was entitled to. I'm not sure what further investigation could be undertaken beyond this meeting, as the election of the chair was played out in public and an overwhelming majority of councillors voted in a way that was delivered in a clear, and I'll use Councillor Carter's words, transparent way. I received 9 votes against 3 votes for Councillor Carter in the election that I deemed as the correct election. All this was done with Councillor Carter in the chair. It was his responsibility to oversee that, yet he is now lodging a complaint that it was not done correctly. All tonight does is undermine the integrity of the council, the town clerk, and all councillors around this table and elsewhere. But more widely, I do have some concerns about the motives behind this. Councillor Carter has talked about proper procedures. I've experienced in the lead up, the during and the after election a number of examples of where I do not believe the council has been properly supported, the mayor has been properly supported by Councillor Carter. I have met with him to discuss that, and we had a robust conversation about issues I had in terms of Councillor Carter's behaviours. I will quote one example, and it's a very clear example in terms of where proper procedures were not adhered to. Councillor Carter called me in for a meeting on the 22nd of April in the Mayor's Parlour. He told me that I could not stand as a mayor because the Lord Warden had instructed that I could not. Now, the head can be shaken, but I now know as of today, 3 other councillors received messages from Councillor Carter before the election to say the Lord Warden had said I could not stand. And I'm not going to name those councillors, it's down to them in their own positions to decide whether they should say that or not, that they were approached by you on that basis. I've seen the written information and I will stand by that assertion.
I'll come back on that.
Of course.
That's wrong, because that is incorrect.
Yeah. For me, that is a strong example of where proper procedures were deviated and where the true democratic process was willingly undermined. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got to say, I also feel my integrity is being challenged tonight, as has Councillor Black, and I just find that it's unacceptable to do this to councillors. Does anybody? It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
It's not. It's an official complaint. We've got a complaints procedure.
But you can't go around challenging the integrity of everybody else.
I'm not.
Well, excuse me, you are. You challenged Councillor Black. You've challenged.
You said earlier that I'm challenging the process. Councillor Tuka quite rightly said that Councillor Carter is challenging the process. I'm challenging the process. I'm not expecting any change from this. I'm challenging the process. And it's my right under the Human Rights Act to be able to change. Now, this is the sort of thing I get, snide remarks under people's breaths. Now, it says in here, it says in our business plan, which Colin Wiles spent a lot of time over, it says that people are meant to be considered with integrity.
Right, but have you shown that integrity to Councillor Black this evening?
You asked me, you said to all of us here, were all of us happy with Councillor Black taking the minutes?
And you said
so you gave that option.
Yeah.
So I could either give a yes or no answer. So I gave a no answer.
May I correct this?
That's
what you
within
actually said was that I was in effect biased because I
I
have.
did not. I
I
said there was
said,
no
in effect, please let me finish, Mr. Carter.
interpretation, councillor
I'm sorry.
Black.
I'm sorry.
Interpretation.
We'll listen to you. Please listen to me
I'm
now.
prepared to listen to
I
you.
don't think you are, but that's not.
As long as you don't misinterpret.
I will interpret exactly what I heard, and you were impugning my integrity. I was asked, without any pre-organisation, to help out. I said at first, I don't want to do it, because I haven't got my glasses with me. You,
I offered
in
you
jest,
some
in
glasses.
jest, and I accept that, and I took that in jest. But nobody else stood up, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And then it was, okay, but you're part of this party and so on. I am doing this, and I've done this as a completely neutral person. And I think you were extremely out of order to suggest because I happen to you. I'm sorry, that is my opinion. I'm allowed to state my opinion.
Councillor Breen asked me. Councillor Breen asked me.
Let's move on. Councillor Pennington.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. You outlined at the beginning the procedure that we would follow. I understood that after the initial clarification system that each of us would have the opportunity to say what we think, and at the moment I just aren't getting there, and I think if you could move on.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do, to get into going around the table. So we'll come to Councillor Wiles.
Yes, so Councillor Carter, I think during your presentation, you said that effectively you seem to be saying that the voting on the 15th was invalid because the proposer and seconder were not in the room, and therefore that you were the only candidate and you should now be mayor today.
That's not what I said. That is what the chair of council.
Is it your contention that you are now still the mayor?
No.
So what do you want from this process? Because
I'm
I'm sorry, but this is bringing the council into disrepute.
No.
It's just wasting our time. Yes, the process wasn't perfect, but the town clerk made the best of a bad job.
Yeah.
The will of the council is that Councillor Schuker should be the mayor and that I should be the deputy mayor. So exactly what do you want from this process?
I thought the internal complaints process was going to be myself, Councillor Breen, the town clerk and Councillor Schuker all in a room to discuss it gentlemanly.
But what do you want?
And get that out. I just want it recognised that two votes were undertaken when they shouldn't have been. You don't take a second vote. That's totally invalid. But the first vote, not on my say so, but on the chair of CAL, I read it out to you earlier, did not follow. All right, I said I don't want any blame. I think Jill Gray, I will stand by the words that Councillor Schuker said, and I think Jill Gray is the greatest town clerk in the whole of the United Kingdom, and I think she's fantastic. So I'm not looking for blame. I'm not even looking for change.
What are you looking
so
for?
all I'm looking for is recognition that the process that was undertaken on the 15th didn't follow the correct procedure. So if somebody just stands up and says, that's right, Councillor Carter, we can all go home.
I'm happy to agree with that. The process was not perfect.
Right, great, okay.
So what do you do?
That's all I want.
Can we just go home now?
Yeah, that's all I want.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
I would just like to say that as a lawyer, I certainly agree that the Local Government Act was complied with. I think there is no doubt about it that the council did what they should. There is an area of contention regarding the first vote when the proposer and seconder was not present, and I think the town clerk was probably incorrect to ask for other nominees to stand up. I think what she should have done and could have done was to adjourn the meeting until Councillor Suker was able to produce his proposer and his seconder, which they did turn up after 20 minutes. So you could have adjourned the meeting and then there could have been no argument about it. And that is the problem. But I'm very pleased that Councillor Wiles has just asked Councillor Carter what is it he wants, because I've never been clear up to now as to what he wants and what we can do to satisfy him. Does he want another vote? Does he want to rerun the vote?
No.
Fine, okay.
Okay,
So
thank
then
you.
that could be done. There's a mechanism which I mentioned which can be done if it was decided that's what should be done.
I don't want that.
Okay. Councillor Marie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just as an observer, obviously watching this, just remember one thing: 16 councillors in this chamber represent the town. This looks like schoolboys kind of playground argument kind of thing, and it's not very good for the town. People are watching it on camera. We'll be watching it online in a couple of days' time. Things can't. Yes, there were mistakes. I do feel that. It's the same for me because I stepped in there, and obviously Councillor Franklin, who was my proposal, wasn't here. So Councillor Mrs. Carter stepped in as my proposer for deputy mayor. Didn't get the seat, but it doesn't matter. Just remember one thing: we've got a lot more work to do within the town, especially this year, especially with the newest administration, new mayor, etc. We need to start getting our heads together, working together, and bringing this stuff to a halt and learn from mistakes. I said on Monday, when we had the votes we had regarding the memberships, that item on the agenda took 40 minutes just to talk about voting. The voting system we have for the council needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked at whether we can do it simpler and a bit more robust as well for the council. That's what I have to say.
Okay, Councillor Wiles.
So I don't know why we have this convoluted system of paper nominations 2-3 weeks in advance of the meeting. It's not required in standing orders. As far as I'm aware, no other councillors do that. All it says is that the council meets once a year and elects a mayor. How we do that is up to us. I believe it would have been unfair to insist upon the proposer and seconder being in the room. And the town clerk quite rightly overrode that requirement to say that if there's anyone else in the room wishes to nominate or second, they should do so. Because what if a proposer had proposed 3 weeks beforehand and then was in hospital or had been hit by a bus that morning? It's clearly a breach of the nominated person's rights, human rights even, that they cannot then stand. So the town clerk did exactly the right thing. The nominator, the proposer and seconder were not in the room for whatever reason, and she asked for anyone else to nominate them. And it was clearly, as I said before, the will of the council overwhelmingly that Councillor Schuker was elected the mayor.
Okay. It seems to, sorry, Councillor Morehouse.
I'd like to give an explanation of why I wasn't in the room at the 6 o'clock meeting, and myself and Councillor Ripley, and that was entirely my fault. I incorrectly believed that the meeting was going to start at 6:30, and when Councillor Ripley contacted me earlier in the day to ask what time the meeting started, I told her 6:30, which is the reason why both Councillor Ripley and myself were not present for the first meeting. And I accept culpability for that. That was entirely my fault. But I do not feel that invalidates the election that took place.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Councillor Ungerson first and then Councillor.
Well, you were there.
Or-
I was just going to respond to Councillor Wales' remark about that the appropriate procedure, given that the nominator and the seconder were not present, was to ask for others. I think there is a risk there that it's always possible that there won't be, substitute nominators and seconders. So I do think, and I take Councillor Marie's point, that we really do need as a council, and this is the lesson to be learned, to set out, after proper discussion, a proper procedure for elections for mayor, deputy mayor, and membership of committees, to which we can all sign up. And I think it calls for a working group. I hope that working group won't last very long. It doesn't seem to me to be a complicated issue. But I do think that we do need to lay down very clear rules, and we should all adhere to them in the future.
Would you like to make that as a proposal?
Yes.
Okay.
May I just remind the meeting that we do have, we actually do have procedure for committees.
For electing.
For elected committees, and that's what we followed. The following week, that was correctly followed, and there were no double counting, and it's very clear you could not vote for yourself. So there is a procedure, but I understand the point about the first two. Was I vote the third one? Well, with the working group.
So I'm going to go to Councillor Morehouse next because he is representing.
I'm going to refer to something that Councillor Marie said about 40-minute session it took to make that decision on Monday when we took a vote. At the end, although it was a long process, we reached a very conclusive, clear and transparent result. And if it takes 40 minutes to get there, that's a good thing. If we rush something in 20 minutes and it goes wrong, then we look like fools. But that's certainly sound by Councillor Marie's comment that it was 40 minutes long, but yes, it was a good process and it worked.
Okay, Councillor Marie.
Yeah, just quickly, so the process regarding the nomination and for mayor and deputy mayor came in a few years ago. I won't bore you with the details. If you want to hear the story, please come and speak to me. I know a couple of you do. I told you in the first bit, it was regarding party politics and ousting others. So if you want to hear the story, you're more welcome to speak to me there.
Okay, Councillor Pennington.
Thank you.
Yes.
For me, the situation is fairly clear in relation to the main 3 points. First point, did we meet the statutory regulations in relation to the election? And the town clerk has reassured us that in the view of the legal advice that she had from Calc, that was the case. The second is that I believe that the procedure for elections was muddled, and I agree with the proposal that we should get our act together and make sure that this doesn't happen again in future. And if Councillor Carter says he's not asking for change, well, I am. I think we should really have a proper procedure that is clearly understood and clearly laid down. And if we ask Councillor Black to chair a working group, I'm sure he would agree. Thank you. Thirdly, the outcome of the vote was clearly very conclusive. So, in my view, the council clearly expressed its view in relation to the election both of the mayor and the deputy mayor. And for me, that is a strong argument.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think we should move on and kind of close this agenda item now. I would just like to say, I think in my mind, we've had a proper election for the mayor. I agree with Councillor Pennington that the process was not followed by all parties. By all parties present, by the mayor at the time, by the councillors, but it was the town clerk who set up the process. It wasn't an agreed process. It was a process set up by the town clerk, and she did the right thing, in my mind, in varying that process at the time to allow. And while she could have adjourned the meeting with a lot of dignitaries downstairs waiting for the formal mayor-making ceremony, that was a decision that was taken at the time because of the pressure of the situation. So I'm grateful to the town clerk for keeping the ball rolling, even if it did mean that on this occasion that the initial process as determined and laid down by the town clerk wasn't followed. And we as councillors, who did not follow the one vote process on the election of the deputy mayor, which is the thing that triggered the second voting. So I would propose that we bring this discussion to a close. I think we've heard from Councillor Carter. He's asking for a full investigation to the process. So is anybody willing to propose that we need a fuller investigation other than what has happened here tonight? Councillor Wise?
I think we've investigated enough unless Councillor Carter wishes further action to be taken. I think we know it wasn't perfect. Lessons have been learned. Next year, I think we should look at having the town council meeting on a different day to the mayor making, so that we have more time to
Exactly.
have the vote. I think this convoluted system of proposer and seconder in advance, we should finish with that. We should just go into the meeting and vote by show of hands for whoever wishes to stand as mayor, and make it much simpler and less convoluted.
Okay, so the decision of the meeting is that the investigation is concluded, but we're going to establish or recommend to the council to establish a working party to review the standing orders for future voting of mayor. Yeah.
I mean, well, I propose
I don't believe a working group is necessary. I think the town clerk or the town clerk's replacement can just come back with a report between now and next May to say this is how it will work next year.
Okay,
And we can have input from councillors to that report.
okay, Councillor Morehouse.
And that report should actually determine whether or not we actually need a working group.
Okay,
It's too much internalisation yet again. It
Right.
needs to be facing
so
out.
do you want to make a formal proposal on that, Councillor Wiles?
My proposal is that this meeting has investigated the complaint. It's found the complaint to some extent justified in terms of the convoluted process that we put in place was not strictly followed, but that the outcome was the right outcome, and that we should learn lessons from that, and that the town clerk or the town clerk's replacement should bring a report to this committee to go on to the council between now and next May on how the voting system for the mayor should take place next May.
Okay,
And could I ask that that's the next town clerk, please? I don't want to be involved in anything because I would be setting up somebody to follow a process they don't have any input to, so I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
right, Catherine.
I just want to say I can't vote for something like that because I don't actually think the way in which the complaint has been couched is justified. What went wrong was that councillors voted more than once and we've been instructed that we only have one vote. So I can't support.
And if someone else wishes to,
I'm happy
make
to
a formal
second this proposal so we can draw a line in the sand on this.
Two things. I don't think we can talk about the right outcome. I think that's much too vague. I think we should say clearly that we understand the advice is that the outcome was in accordance with the statutory requirement, firstly. Secondly, I think the report needs to be with us well before next May. I think it needs to be clearly read, digested and adopted probably around February, March, so that we are all set up for the meeting in May.
Okay, so town clerk, in terms of that proposal or adjusted proposal, you are adjusting the proposal here from Councillor Wiles. So the proposal is that the outcome of the election was correct, was fair and reasonable and transparent, etc.
And in line with the local
and in line with the Local Government Act. There were some procedural steps that weren't followed by all parties at the meeting, from the mayor at the time, because it says in the guidance the mayor at the time must chair the meeting and must preside over the
Point of
meeting.
order, Mr. Chairman. There's a proposal already on the floor from Councillor Wiles, and I just said to you that I was prepared to second Councillor Wiles. You're now doing a secondary proposal.
Yeah.
I heard the words from Councillor Wiles that I propose,
Okay,
and
well,
I seconded
vote on that.
let's go back. Let's go back.
Vote on that one.
Can we just reread the proposal then, please, Town Clerk?
From Councillor Wiles.
Yeah.
He said that the investigation was concluded, that it was justified. I think is the word you used.
I withdraw that. Sorry, we need something
Convoluted.
more robust. It needs to say that we follow the law there were some irregularities in our own internal procedures, but that the result was correct. The outcome was correct.
Followed count
And the intent is for the lessons learned to be reflected in the process to be followed next year.
May I just, in the interest of accuracy, what I got from Councillor Wells with was that this meeting has investigated the complaint. There is some justified because a convoluted process was not followed. And the third point is, however, the outcome was a correct legal outcome. That's what I noted.
I would agree with that, other than we need to add the intent is to correct, put in place a better process for next year that incorporates the lessons learned.
Yes, what we have not agreed on is how that should be done.
Well, you said it would be done by the new town clerk, bringing a report.
I don't think it was a convoluted process. I think it was a very clear process which people didn't follow.
Exactly. Well done. Well done. Here. Exactly. It was very.
But I think we do need to agree a process. We all need to agree to it and understand it and follow it.
Well, can someone find a form of words that we can all agree on?
Exactly, yeah. Because as Councillor Anderson said, sorry, Chairman, as Councillor Anderson said, it literally, we have got the best town clerk. She laid out everything for everybody to do. 6 p.m. on the 15th of May. These are the things you have to follow. It was all quite simple. And all I'm asking for is just for this council to say, yes, you're right, Councillor Carter, we didn't follow those, but we've got an outcome and let's live with it, and that's it.
But you chaired the meeting and you went.
No, I didn't.
You started off chairing the meeting.
All I opened,
That's
as Councillor Black would say, semantics are very important. I opened the meeting. If you look at the video, I open the meeting and I say, welcome here. I've never seen so many ties in all my life.
Yeah.
I then said, item number 1, election of the mayor, I now hand over to the town clerk. And in fact, in her process, it says that the town clerk will take over the process until a new mayor is elected. And that's what it
So
says.
that wasn't in accordance with the legislation, as per the legal note.
Well, that was what the town
But
clerk.
the chairman, if present, must preside at the meeting.
Well, I didn't.
No,
I
sorry,
did not.
you were in the chair when the town clerk said, do I have nominations?
I disagree.
The
I did not preside
You're
over
not in
the
the chair.
election.
The town
But
clerk asked
that
anyone in the
for
room,
me,
and you were in the chair.
that for me is one of the reasons I'm saying that people didn't follow the proper processes. This is the note, legal topic note, which says the chairman, if present, must preside. It's the same must that the nominators and seconders must be present.
Okay.
So there are a few musts which have not been adhered to, and that's really what we're saying. So people didn't comply with the word, but the intent and the transparency and everything was there.
It's in black and white here. The town clerk, as proper officer, will lead the part of the meeting where the mayor and deputy mayor are elected. You couldn't get plain English.
Yeah, but
Couldn't get plain English.
that shouldn't have
Look
been
at the
there.
video. Look at Christina's video. I opened the meeting and I handed over to the town clerk as I was supposed to do.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've seen more or less than Councillor Morehouse and Councillor Carter, but I've seen 4 mayors go through this chamber in the space of the 4 years I've been councillor. Yes. The process is that the chair is obviously the mayor of the council, and the mayor stays the mayor until the vote is completed and the new mayor is elected. The proper officer is just there for backup, just to help with regarding the process and the voting process. But the mayor is the mayor until they vacate their seat and give it to the new elected mayor.
Incorrect.
So,
Can
Chair,
we agree on a revised version of Councillor Ward's?
So, Chair, we've only been asked to consider the formal complaint. We've done that.
Yes.
We should simply be saying, as far as I'm concerned, that we have tested the complaint And it did not contravene with the Local Government Act 1972. We should leave it there. We should not be trying to nuance all sorts of elements to try and build some sort of domino house that's going to fall apart, because actually all we're doing is we're going round in circles. We've considered the complaints. We are not saying it needs to go anywhere else. That's what we're saying. We are also saying that it did not, I believe, contravene with the Local Government Act. It stops there as far as I'm concerned tonight.
So I've written a new form of words if you wish me to read them out. In response to the complaint from Councillor Carter, the committee concludes that the law, the Local Government Act 1972, was followed. However, the council will review its procedures for electing the mayor in 2026 and a report and deputy mayor in 2026, and a report will come to the Finance and General Purposes Committee and full council by February of 2026.
Happy with that?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that doesn't, Councillor Wiles said himself that the due process wasn't followed. And now
there is no due process, it's purely in
It is the proper officer is in charge.
I literally suggested that to bring some sort of order to things, because what you can't have, which does happen sometimes, which is complete chaos. You have 16 councillors come into the room. Nobody knows who wants to stand for mayor. Nobody knows who wants to stand for deputy mayor. And Councillor Pennington's seen it, and he just makes the whole thing look chaotic, and you're actually losing reputation. What I suggested was a process to try and get some order to things, because usually what happens, we all know it happens in other councils, people decide behind closed doors what's going to be happening. That is why it seems to flow so smoothly. That's why it flows so smoothly. So because there wasn't that consensus here where we had that situation, I had to step in, because I was getting emails from people suggesting we have secret votes, we have email voting, and the reason I said the person who's nominating and second, and Councillor Carter, just to clarify for you, it wasn't to suggest that somebody else couldn't step in. It was simply to say, if you are going to the Bermuda for a month, please don't sign the nomination form, because you know you won't be here. But it didn't state, I did not state that somebody else could not nominate, and I did not state that someone else could not second. That was not my intention. That was not, you've misconstrued what I've said, but basically that was my intention, to try and bring some clarity to the process. That's all I wanted to do. And I thought, in my opinion, it was straightforward.
Rather than trying to correct her as she's speaking.
No,
it's not
it's in black and white.
You're doing it again.
I just second Councillor Wiles' proposal.
That's in black and white. Are you refusing to agree? It says here, the councillors who have nominated and seconded the above nominees must attend
Can we go to a
the
vote
meeting.
on it?
So I'm saying that we will review the procedure.
So are we saying that that is not the procedure? Because I followed the procedure 100%.
You didn't.
You didn't. I didn't vote twice. I only voted for myself.
No, you voted twice.
Who else did I vote
Deputy
for?
Mayor, you voted for Councillor Reid twice.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
I didn't.
Chair, sorry.
Yeah, no, let's take a vote on that and bring this matter to a close now. All right, okay.
So do you want to read?
So in response to the complaint from Councillor Carter, the committee concludes that the law, the Local Government Act 1977, was followed. 1972, sorry, was followed. However, the council will review its procedures for the election of mayor and deputy mayor for 2026, and will bring a report to council by February of 2026.
Okay. Somebody want to second that? Okay, can we have a vote on that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favour and 2 against.
Okay, thank you everyone for that. It's taken a long time. Can we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the local government reorganisation and the transfer of assets from district to town parish councils. All right, okay.
Town Clerk, could you take my apologies for the rest of the meeting, because I have got no faith in this council doing what is just, truthful and impartial. I was going to say, you can stay, but I'll be driving.
Members of this committee.
Yes.
Master of War and someone. Yeah, they are. How was the pause?
Can't wait to get out of here. It's madness. This is not what I come to work for.
Yes.
It's disgusting, really.
That is narcissistic behaviour.
Sorry, Councillor Miles, you're on camera.
I know
You
it's
are being
like, but I
recorded.
have to say it. It's,
Okay, let's continue with the meeting and get
Can I
done.
just check that the two councillors have decided to leave the meeting?
yes.
They have left the meeting, I'll note that. I wouldn't want anything to be missed out, would I?
Okay, so let's move on to the local government reorganisation or devolution and transfer of assets from district to town parish councils. To consider a verbal report from the Mayor with an update on the available options for Sandwich Town Council regarding the potential transfer of identified Dover District Council assets to the Town Council and to decide any actions necessary. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So myself and the Town Clerk met with Kevin Mills on Friday the 20th of June. We covered a number of questions relating to the reorganisation of local government. And I'll just run through what was said and then we can react to that, decide what we want to do next. So the overarching timescale we've got is fairly limited. So I suggest that what we should do is have an initial discussion here. We should work to produce a report that goes to a extraordinary STC in no more than 3 to 4 weeks' time, so we can then hopefully get endorsed and take to Kevin Mills and the relevant officers in DDC. So the opening question was whether DDC were proposing to introduce a community asset transfer process. I referred to other councils such as Seven Oaks having done so, and they've actually included a timetable and process. So the response was that DDC are happy to have a conversation, but want to understand what the town council is looking to take over. So that's the key thing, is to be driven by us to them. However, the car parks are likely to be off the table due to the income generated from potential unitary authority. Which is interesting because I'm joining an online meeting tomorrow about assets transfer. I'm not sure whether it's the town clerk, somebody else is joining. We have 2 tickets.
No, there is only one ticket. Yeah.
There's only one person joining tomorrow,
Yes.
it's me.
Yes.
And you wrongly are presenting their proposal, so it's talking around their proposal. And interestingly, they've predicated the success of their proposal on taking on board car parks. Okay. Second question was that we do want to consider presenting a proposal for discussion, but this is dependent on understanding if and how DDC wants to handle this. So the leader suggested meeting again in 3 to 4 weeks' time to discuss further with relevant officers the potential for assets transfer. We need to be, I've made a note, that means I think we need to be ready with a proposal by the 19th of July. So that's the sort of time frame we should be working to. And then I made a note that key components of any proposal is to understand the income and expense for any assets we might want to discuss. How do we progress this in such a short time frame alongside some 30 or so other parish councils? Councillor Mills noted a request for data from ourselves. For example, the data for maintenance of the public toilets, if you want to take those over, would be helpful for it. You acknowledge it would be helpful for us to understand that, and he would assist STC councillors in making an informed decision. So I think when we take a proposal to them, it has to be predicated on the basis that we also then want to have the data that supports those items that we might want to consider taking over. And then I mentioned that a key component of any proposal is to understand the income and expense for any asset. How do we progress it? Sorry, that's what I just covered. Yes, so that will come out. So understanding whether the money will follow the asset. That came up in our previous F&GP discussion. And Councillor Mills said this is not likely, as there is debt that will have to be shared and the unitary authority will have to balance their budgets. It is recognised that local councils do not currently have a cap on their raising income via the preset. So the principal view expressed was, if we're going to take something, money will not follow. And we would have to consider how we raise that money ourselves, and that probably could only be through the preset. And also whether any cost or reverse premium to take an asset, not likely due to the previous comments. So again, any asset that we look at, there will be a monetary value for that asset, particularly if it's a building. And there may well therefore be a presentation to us of the purchase cost alongside of taking ownership. But those are the things that will come out in the discussion with the relevant officers. I then went on to talk specifically, if it's on the next page, about Jubilee Centre. And Councillor Mills expressed full support for it. He understood the value of it to the community. He would be very unhappy if it was, for whatever reason, not to continue as a sustainable offer. However, his opinion, this was an opinion, personal opinion, the facility has to be viable. For it to be viable, it does need to have a commercial element built into it to become a sustainable business model. So that was a personal view, that the long-term future of it had to somehow build in a commercial element of it, which I'm sure the trustees are grappling with and trying to address already. Yeah. What he did say was there would be an opportunity to also consider from the trustees themselves whether they would want to put forward a proposal to take ownership. Because actually, there may well be a capital purchase cost, and whether STC will be able to pay for that at this moment is open for discussion, because we don't know what it will cost. So the trustees should themselves look at it seriously as an option for themselves, but then they would also be faced with the same challenge around an upfront cost to take it on. Yeah. So those were the key points that came out of it. So we've got the door open to have a conversation. We've got a short time to get a proposal across all the assets we've got in front of us to decide which we want to have a conversation with. We will have to stump up the monies to run those. We will not get any money from DDC as a consequence of any transfer, and there will almost certainly be a capital cost up front for any of the assets, depending on what it is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Black.
When you say there's a capital cost up front, are we in effect being required to buy the asset?
If there is a transfer and it has a capital value, so the Jubilee Centre, I think, is a really good example of that. It has a capital value, even though it's got a community centre sitting on the land, it's land. It's,
but by that,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but by that definition, about 95% of this
could.
And that, I would be a little bit surprised if that was the intention of Westminster. I would be more than a little surprised if that was the intention of Westminster, to burden parishes with.
So the intention of Westminster and all that's been disclosed so far makes no statements around transferring downwards. There have been certain assumptions built up by certain district councils in terms of having a conversation. Yeah. So the bottom line that they are expressing at district council level is that they won't give anything away at nil cost. If it's a community asset, there is a question about whether it's the market value versus a community value, which has to be part of the negotiation, i.e. a lesser cost than true market value. But they have to demonstrate, the district can upwards, if they release any assets downwards, that they've done it on a sound basis.
Okay, Councillor Pennington.
Thank you. I think to go through a long cherry picking exercise of the list of assets is going to be fruitless because everybody will want the revenue generating assets and probably fewer of the others. My own preference would be to say that we want to take over all the assets and then to haggle over the terms. And I'm not sure on what basis DBC is negotiating with us because they won't exist. Who is actually going to be our interlocutor? We seem to be, we know that we will continue, but we're negotiating with people whose organisation will disappear in a couple of years. It seems to me to be a very fluid and difficult situation.
But I
think they should go for the max, in other words, ask for everything, and expect the money to come with them.
I understand that, and I suggest that we go through a list of the assets and decide whether we're interested, we might be interested in, or we're definitely not interested in. And that then gives us at least a kind of a starting position.
Yeah.
And I think in doing so, we need to consider whether it's a revenue generating. We also need to consider the operational impact of taking on any asset because it might need operational buildings, it might need additional employees and so forth. So I propose we just go down, and once we've got this list, we've then got something for the mayor and the town clerk to have a meaningful discussion.
Yeah. The DPC will do the same thing and come up with the same list that they want to keep.
Well, that's where the negotiation starts, Councillor.
Yes, I mean, I'm not sure that we're in a position at the moment to go through the list because we don't have the information that we needed about how much revenue bits of asset.
But I think that's the starting point because if we say we're interested in the cemetery, what is the operational cost of the cemetery? That's information that Dover would then have to provide to us.
Oh, I see. I mean, there's also an income to the cemetery, but
Well, that's it.
idea how that works.
Yeah.
And so I think it is a principal presentation of what we would like to have a conversation about. Because I know Councillor Pennington's perspective. Actually, I think there are things on here that we wouldn't want to touch, but we'll agree collectively. I don't think we should be in a conversation of, and it's the number one item, the butts playing field and pavilion. Because the staffing requirements of that in terms of maintenance, in terms of security and all of those things, do we seriously want to have big? But if the collective agreement is we should, then that will go onto the list and they will understand the costs involved. But I can say what I've picked up from all the sessions I've been to so far, and Kevin Mills said the same. Money will not, and if we are under the illusion money will come down with these assets, it will not.
Yeah, no, I think we've got that picture. Yeah. So you're re-emphasising what I'm saying. Go through the list of assets, think about the revenue impact, think about the operational impact in deciding whether we're interested or we're not interested. Councillor Black.
Can I suggest to speed the process, group them? In other words, I'll be interested in car parks, yes or no, rather than going through each individual car park. I'll be interested in
okay.
These other things.
That's not a problem, Councillor.
I would like to make a point which I've made before, and that is that you shouldn't only look at finance. If, for example, I mean, I'm not saying we should, but if, for example, you were thinking about taking over the car parks, that's not just a question of income and expenditure.
No.
It's also a question of, do we want to be in a position to make a decision about parking fees? And I think the answer is yes, we do. So the question of power is very important. But it's not just devolution of assets, it's devolution of decision making as well. And I do think we have to take that into account.
Yeah, understand, yep, fair dates, yeah. Okay, shall we go through a list of assets then? Okay, the first one is the cemetery. Woodnessborough Cemetery. Those in favour of saying we're interested in it, with a show of hands. Possibly interested in it. So we're against. Not interested.
Not interested.
Sorry, raise the point. It seems preferable that this was a full council decision making process.
Well, exactly. That's what we're trying to get to, this
Yeah.
position where we've got a
We
recommendation.
can rule things out that then other
No.
councillors not present.
We're going to take this to a extraordinary
Yes.
STC meeting with our recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole, thank you.
Okay, the next one is the Butts playing fields. Against, not interested. Gaze and Salts.
Sorry, Chair, we don't know what the financial arrangement there is with the cricket club. Do they pay a rent?
Yes.
They do,
How
but,
much?
so this is a principal view. Do we think the parish council should, and if the vote is yes, then so be it. Do we think the parish council should be running the playing fields, which includes a pavilion, which probably has an income stream? The principle is, should we be taking on board the playing fields?
If it protects it from a large
We don't know what the future is.
unitary authority,
We
then
have,
yes.
we have to have a sound reason why it's appropriate for the parish council to take it on.
To protect it from a large unitary authority.
Yeah,
This is
but
our town.
sorry.
This is our town.
The word asset stripping is in my mind at the moment, that is the danger with future unitary organisations, that everything is going to cost someone something. If there's no money, we know KCC is in debt, and that debt's got to be divided. So if there's a risk of losing these things permanently from local authority or public ownership, and I think that's a bigger issue. It seems really kind of like making decisions with very little information.
Well, I think that's the point. If we say we might be interested in it, we can ask for further information about the operational costs, about the revenue from the cricket club and the football pitches and so forth.
So long
Could
as
we not ask for that in the park with every floor, to have that following every detail of the information that they have in a global thing?
So the district council are not going to have resources to say to every local council, every asset that is in your parish, we can give you. They won't do that. So what they're looking for is for the parish local councils and town councils to come to them with some sort of idea of what it is the town council might be prepared to take on. So there's no commitment, it's just saying they might be. And what I would suggest as well is, as the mayor was saying, these decisions and these things will impact on the precepts. So there has to be an appetite from the council to be prepared to raise precepts in these situations. And that's what other councils are doing. They are, and the mayor's talked about 7
we should
Oaks.
have a sound justification why we want to take any of these assets on. So I don't believe the fear that at some point in the future a unitary council might asset strip is something we can build into a proposal. Because currently, until 2028, Dover District Council will exist and they will manage these assets and own them.
But if the unitary authority is a reform-run authority, which it could well be, then who knows?
Yes, I mean, I would like, two cricket grounds, I can see a unitary authority looking at Sandwich, two big cricket grounds, one of them ideal for development. They've got a large debt, sell it off to a developer. So there is a question.
So how do we turn that into a sound justification of a parish council to have that in the bus playing field? What I can't do with the town clerk is go to DDC and say, based on what we've said so far about the bus playing field, I don't think we have a sound justification as to why the parish council should appropriately have that asset. If somebody can come up with it, then that's great, it's on the list. A sound justification. Not a fear that reform unitary council might asset strip. There's no way we can present that to DDC.
No, but any old council, we all know that all the local authorities are in terrible financial difficulty. And the temptation to sell off large expanses of land will be very high.
That's a given.
And we may decide as a town council, we don't want that to happen. I don't think the Bucks playing field is in a risky position because it's so close to the town hall and so on. And it's an obvious amount, but I do think the Gage and Salisbury could easily be threatened that way.
I understand, but at the end of the day, maybe the Sandwich Town Cricket Club might be interested in buying it. You know, we don't necessarily want to kind of shut the door on that. So if there is doubt, we should ask for more information about the asset.
Well, we need to decide by 19th of July.
To a certain extent, we're going to say to Dover, your resources are your problem. We require this information. It's part of the whole procedure. So get off your backsides and do it.
It's not part of the procedure, unfortunately.
Well, it has to be. You cannot do it if you have no financial information whatsoever. And I really don't think that that's anything that is going to run. But I mean, is that argument being applied by other district councils?
By a number it is. So the local government reorganisation does not have a procedure for parish councils to request the transfer of assets.
So why are we even talking about it?
Because there is an opportunity within districts, some more so than others, to have a conversation. But they have to justify from the district why a transfer is the right thing to do.
Seems a bit convoluted, but
Yes, Lars.
I think the danger is that we're being jumped into making a decision without having all the financial information.
Well, that's why we need to make a list.
Salts is a classic example. There was talk some time ago about extending the car park. So let's say a new unitary authority looks at that, owns the car park, owns the recreation ground. They can make a much, much bigger car park there, which the town might not wish to happen.
Yeah.
But it's their land and there's nothing we can do about it.
I understand.
So until we know the exact financial arrangements, I think I'm inclined to support Councillor Pennington's view, which is let's express an interest in everything and ask for more information.
We're not committing ourselves, it's just, I don't understand how we can take a decision on each item without quite a lot of background information. We aren't going to get that information and be able to absorb it before the 19th of July. So you ask for everything and then have a look at it afterwards. But everybody is going to be fighting for those things that are of either a value or generate an income stream. We booked the Gage and Salts cricket ground or the verges of it for fun in the park on the 9th of August. It's not as if it's only the cricket club that's interested. It's a beautiful site. It could be used a lot more. And from my contacts with the cricket club, I'm not a member, but I understand they want to develop the use of it as well. But if we don't have it, we can't guarantee that.
Okay, well, I understand that. Are there properties or assets that are of greater priority? Because if we ask for everything, we might not get the information that we really want.
So for me, it would be the toilets, because we already know that DDC closed those. The council here voted to have them reopened and run them. So we can see the writing is on the wall. The graffiti is on the wall already regards those buildings. So the question is, are they...
Okay, so can we leave it? The toilets, the Jubilee Centre, these are the priority ones. We can ask for all, but priority are those three.
The WI building.
The WI building. Yes. And what about the Guildhall? My goodness, that's.
That's a good question, isn't it?
So, Chair, would it make sense to rank these in, kind of bidding order, if you like, to say,
Well,
these are the ones, these are our high priorities and these are lower priorities?
well, that's exactly what I was kind of working on.
We're interested in all of them, potentially.
We're interested in all, but some more than others,
Yes.
right? So the Phoenix Youth Centre, is that the Jubilee?
Yes.
And the Jubilee Playground?
Well, the Jubilee Road Playgroup, I don't know, I think that must
Jubilee
be.
Road Playground.
No, it's
that's the,
Jubilee Road Playgroup,
that's
and I
opposite
think that
the- that's
might be the
opposite the-
merry-go-round nursery, which is
Yeah.
opposite to the Jubilee Centre.
Okay.
It used to be called the Phoenix Youth Centre, but I'm not certain.
Thing
Unless
is,
they're referring to the green area that's opposite the Jubilee Centre, which people walk their dogs in.
Yes, I've no idea. I mean, at least people see.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
That requires greater clarification because it could possibly mean that building is opposite. But
Yes,
there used to be a playground, a small playground in Jubilee Road, which was removed quite some years ago.
on that green area opposite the Jubilee Centre.
It's actually between Birch Avenue and Brightonsea Road. There was a play area
Oh,
there.
I know exactly what you mean, yes.
Just an open space.
It is now, yes. But it might be still listed on the asset. That's what we need
Yes,
clarity.
Yes, we do, because it's not listed under parks, park buildings and recreation.
but it's not
Space.
it's not a priority for us. We would like the information, but it's not a priority asset.
Well, we don't know what it
We
is.
don't know what it is.
The Jubilee Road Playgroup, we
need more
don't know what it
clarification.
is.
We need
Is there any playgroup or playground? And that's what needs to be clarified.
It says playgroup.
Can I suggest that we're rating of 1, 2, 3, we spend a couple of minutes going through it and then see what most people want, because otherwise we would be here all night.
Okay.
So that's sensible. And one being, we definitely want this. Two being, oh well, and three, we really don't think we want this.
Yeah,
Can I make that suggestion?
yeah, I think it's a good one.
Well, I think that aligns to what I was saying earlier. Are we definitely interested? Are we possibly interested? Are we not interested? No.
I'm sorry, sorry. I'm not being sufficiently integrated in this.
It's warm, it's warm.
I'm sure it's all happened.
Right, so we were trying to initially identify the priority items, and we're saying the Phoenix Youth Centre, the WI, the toilets.
And
Key Green.
Sandown Road allotments,
Allotments, because we could group that with the other allotments we've already got,
maybe the tennis club.
which is.
Well, the WI, I presume, is the locker.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty useful.
I know Councillor Gray would say the key, but he's not a member of this committee.
I would say the key.
I did speak to the key.
Yes.
Yes, what he said, it would be impossible to articulate what we could do with it within the timescale we've got available. So he said it's a much longer term prospect in terms of understanding. And if we're asked by BDC, what would you do with it? There isn't an answer at the moment.
No.
Apart from obviously the obvious, make it better,
Or make it
more
different.
use, more
Make it
use.
different, not
Yeah.
have it as a car park.
Yeah, well,
I
that's-
think that's,
well, they are two separate areas, aren't they? One is called Sandwich Key and one is
oh,
called
yes.
the Key car park.
Yeah.
I mean, it's daft because it should be an integrated use where possible. And where it's not the car park, it's a very small area from the toilets back to the bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we have got
But there's also Sandwich Key.
the Sandwich Key is about,
Which is the green park with the village.
Oh, beyond the gate.
Is that the Key Green?
Yes.
Properly defined as
It's
Key
listed
Green.
here as Sandwich Key.
Mr. Chairman, it's got to be, again, clarification, is it the Key or is it the Key Green?
It's the key, it must be the Key Green because it's listed under park buildings and recreation.
Are we asking for all the car parks?
So, again, with the key, we would need to know what the potential income is from that, from mooring fees, etc., but also what the potential maintenance costs, because it's a big engineering structural project.
absolutely, but is it a priority or is it?
Well, it might be for some councils,
It is.
but also the car park, I would argue, the area in front of the key directly in front of the rural could be a priority for us, because that could become a park or an open space or tables and chairs, whereas the rest of the car park maybe is less, desirable.
Priority or secondary?
It's not high, but it's, mid-table, upper mid-table for me, I would say.
Maybe got another category.
I mean, there are councillors on the Heritage Harbour Trust who are very keen to see something different happen on that area.
Okay. Okay. The town wall law.
No,
There you go.
Hurrah!
definitely.
Holders garden play area.
If you keep one play area, you really have to keep the three of them. You can't, I mean, the south side is already badly neglected for play areas.
But the concern would be that any play area has a significant amount of investment needed, and the ones we've got are in deep need of investment.
Yeah.
How does a town council, parish council pay for, you look at what we've just done down on the quay, £58,000 for a partial refurbishment, ongoing maintenance, no money provided to do that.
Insurance.
We just couldn't.
But what is the likelihood of a unitary authority caring about play areas in Sandwich?
Possibly not.
None at
I
all.
mean, that site you could build on PDQ.
No, but if you take the one at the Butts, that is a strategic play park. So that is the one that gets the attention from BBC, and you would expect a similar arrangement would have to be in place, even at a unitary council level. There will be strategic play areas, because that is part of the offer, isn't it, to the children of any community, that there are play parks made available. So there will be a strategic play park strategy. And that's what the Butts is at the moment.
So we're kind of leaving that. That's something that is a low priority for us, the play parks.
Back in 2007, when I first elected, one of the first things that was on the cards was Holders Gardens play area was under threat.
Yeah.
And councillors Perry and Scollard led on keeping that play park going.
Yes.
So we'll have a backlash from the residents of Holders if we allow that to go.
Exactly.
It's not going.
It's not going away.
It's not going anywhere at the
But
moment.
No.
for the time being, for the purposes of this exercise, what I'm hearing is that we should kind of just leave it as a lower priority in terms of information or whatever. Councillor Wiles.
It all comes down to the valuation, because clearly a play area has no income, but it has costs.
Yeah.
So the valuation is negative. If there was any justice, it would come with a dowry or a lump sum to say this is how much you have, but clearly that's not going to happen. So yes, it has to be a low priority, but potentially an unpopular decision.
Okay.
I really support Councillor Emerson's comment that it's not just about finance. In my view, is we should be encouraging young families to come into this town, and play areas are very important for them. I mean, they have a social function. community
Okay.
function.
Well, we can only see what information will be provided
Okay.
about those.
I just want to add to that I have persuaded KCC to produce a census data, the 2021 census data on the Sandwich North and Sandwich South basis. And there are striking similarities actually, but there are also clear differences. And families with young children are much more likely to live in Sandwich South than they do in Sandwich North. And Sandwich South is not well provided for as far as play space is concerned. So, will you hear what I'm saying?
It's strategic.
Okay. Gaze and Salts Nature Reserve.
No.
Why not? It's
So-
a wonderful amenity in this town.
But can we
Yeah, of
afford
course, and all these things are wonderful, but if you take Gaze and Salts Nature Reserve as an example, you have is a DDC team, Parks and Open Spaces officers, continually engaging with the trustees and the workers there. So what you would say at a parish council level, you need to employ the expertise to ensure that it's run properly, that it adheres to all of the environmental and other rules that are required. So I am acutely aware Darren Solly has regular meetings with Mike, whatever his role is, and they're discussing things like the scrapes, the protection of the wildlife, and all of that. That would then become our responsibility.
Do the new unitary authorities have a specific environmental requirement? Because if they have, then it says, over to you, mate.
Well, we don't have any detail, as I suspect they don't themselves, in terms of how it was structured in terms of those requirements.
I believe Gazing is protected as a nature reserve, so
Yeah,
it's not,
so
can't be built on.
in that case, that suggests to me the answer is unfortunately no.
We did discuss at the Monks Wall Committee the level of protection for Monks Wall, and it's actually quite limited.
Right.
Okay. The Guildhall car park, Gazing Salts car park. We can ask, but we're not going to get.
I think we should put why wouldn't we ask?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the answer may well be no, but why not ask? Because actually we do own half of the car park at Backney, so
Okay.
we just recognise,
But they're likely to say, okay, 10 million,
Yeah.
and it's yours.
and then you have to employ people to manage it.
Well, they're not making much money out of car parks anyway, as we discovered a few weeks ago.
Okay.
In fact, the return is pathetic.
So let's crack on. The last two then are the 2 Market Street and the Guildhall.
No to the first. Guildhall, again, it depends on the price. It's an asset.
Why wouldn't you want Market Street for the commercial asset, for the rental value?
Well, we already own it
Well, so why are they claiming it?
because it's part of the sandwich
Oh,
agreement.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So they took that and we were given the Guildhall to use.
No, it's fins. No, it's the lawyers, sorry.
Oh, I
What
see.
are they called?
Stillwell and
Single
No,
Single.
it's Fins, number 2.
It's a bit of a weird construct actually. It does cover both aspects, but it is fins.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
all right. And the Guildhall, we need to find out more about it as a priority. Put it on.
You were supposed to pass a resolution, weren't we, to request negotiations on it?
So there has been some very loose conversations about it, but yes, we do need a resolution to progress that.
We need clarity about what taking it on means, because at the moment we've got it.
Yes.
We've got everything that it costs is our responsibility. So it sounds like a simple, yes, we'll take it because already we're paying for it, but we would want to know what the implications would mean.
Okay, so to try and close up then on this, we're saying that the priority items are the toilets, the Women's Institute, the allotments, the tennis courts, the Phoenix Youth Centre, the Jubilee Centre, and the Guildhall. Those are the things that are priority. The things that we're not interested in are the cemetery, we need, and yes, really just the cemetery. And we have, I thought that was what we said about the town wall walk.
Yeah, we said town hall walk.
No, we said no to that.
And Gazing Salts, nature reserve.
And Gazing Salts.
And Gazing Salts Nature Reserve, yes.
That's good. At least it's something.
And then all of the other items we want to find out more information as a secondary.
Secondary.
middle tier.
So the car parks are in the middle category?
No, it's not.
Top, okay.
Does that include Goes and Sorts car park?
Yes,
Yes,
all
three.
car parks.
And what about the toilets? What's happening?
Top.
Sorry, has the access to Cowleys been included? Because I think that's GDC owned.
It's not listed as an
It's not
asset, that's good, so
listed
it can be included as a question. But is that is it a highways issue or is it an asset in terms of
My
land?
understanding it's owned by DDC, but then part of it is leased to what was SIDS. Because that building is potentially for sale.
It is.
So with the, let's say it's sold, with the land, if the land is owned by DDC, where does that go? If
Yes.
that then is sold
To another party,
a private party,
access will be an issue.
yes, totally. Whereas we've got an opportunity
Yeah.
of making Cowleys a lot more useful.
Okay. Are we happy then?
Yeah, deliver this.
Right, let's draw the meeting to a close. We've been here over 2 hours now. I thank everybody and remind everybody that the date and time of the next meeting is on the 16th of July.
I just thank the chair for what was a challenging agenda. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
A hot seat between the complaint and a local government reorganisation.